Set up yo' foolin' 'fo' I knock you de side o' the head, and tell me 'bout that will. Tell me 'tain't busted, do, honey, and I'll ne'er forget you." "Well, 'tain't, 'cause dey's a new one made, and Marse Tom's all right again. But what is you in such a sweat 'bout for it, mammy? 'Tain't none o' your business, I don't reckon." "'Tain't none o' my business? Well, whose business is it, den, I'd like to know? Was I his mother till he was 15 years old, or wasn't I? You answer me dat. And you spec I could see him turned out poor and ornery on de world, and never care nothin' 'bout it? I reckon if you'd ever been a mother yourself, Valet de Chambers, you wouldn't talk such foolishness as dat." Well, den, old Marsa forgive him and fixed up de will again. Do dat satisfy you? Yes, she was satisfied now, and quite happy and sentimental over it. She kept coming daily, and at last she was told that Tom had come home. She began to tremble with emotion, and straightway sent to beg him to let his po' old nigger mammy have just one sight of him and die for joy. Tom was stretched at his lazy ease on a sofa when Chambers brought the petition. Time had not modified his ancient detestation of the humble drudge and protector of his boyhood. It was still bitter and uncompromising. He sat up and bent a severe gaze upon the face of the young fellow whose name he was unconsciously using, and whose family rights he was enjoying. He maintained the gaze until the victim of it had become satisfactorily pallid with terror. Then he said, "What does the old rip want with me?" The petition was meekly repeated. "Who gave you permission to come and disturb me with the social attentions of niggers?" Tom had risen. The other young man was trembling now, visibly. He saw what was coming, and bent his head sideways and put up his left arm to shield it. Tom rained cuffs upon the head and its shield, saying no word. The victim received each blow with a beseeching, "Please, Marse Tom! Oh, please, Marse Tom!" 7 blows. Then Tom said, "Face the door. March." He followed behind with 1, 2, 3 solid kicks. The last one helped the pure white slave over the door-sill, and he limped away, mopping his eyes with his old ragged sleeve. Tom shouted after him, "Send her in." Then he flung himself, panting, on the sofa again and rasped out the remark, "He arrived just at the right moment. I was full to the brim with bitter thinkings, and nobody to take it out of. How refreshing it was! I feel better." Tom's mother entered now, closing the door behind her, and approached her son with all the wheedling and supplication servilities that fear and interest can impart to the words and attitudes of the born slave. She stopped a yard from her boy and made 2 or 3 admiring exclamations over his manly stature and general handsomeness, and Tom put an arm under his head and hoisted a leg over the sofa back in order to look properly indifferent. "My land, how you is growed, honey! Clad o' goodness, I wouldn't 'a' knowed you, Marse Tom. 'Deed I wouldn't. Look at me good. Does you 'member old Roxy? Does you know yo' old nigger mammy, honey? Well, now, I can lay down and die in peace, 'cause I's seed—" "Cut it short, God damn it! Cut it short! What is it you want?" "You hear dat? Just the same old Marse Tom, always so gay and funnin' wid de old mammy. I's just as sure—" "Cut it short, I tell you, and get along. What do you want?" This was a bitter disappointment. Roxy had for so many days nourished and fondled and petted her notion that Tom would be glad to see his old nurse, and would make her proud and happy to the marrow with a cordial word or two, that it took 2 rebuffs to convince her that he was not funning, and that her beautiful dream was a fond and foolish variety, a shabby and pitiful mistake. She was hurt to the heart, and so ashamed that for a moment she did not quite know what to do or how to act. Then her breast began to heave, the tears came, and in her forlornness she was moved to try that other dream of hers, an appeal to her boy's charity, and so upon the impulse and without reflection she offered her supplication. "Oh, Marse Tom, de po' old mammy is in sich hard luck dese days, and she's kinder crippled in the arms, and can't work, and if you could give me $1, only just one little dollar—" Tom was on his feet so suddenly that the supplicant was startled into a jump herself. $1? Give you $1? I've a notion to strangle you. Is that your errand here? Clear out, and be quick about it." Roxy backed slowly toward the door. When she was halfway, she stopped and said mournfully, "Marse Tom, I nussed you when you was a little baby, and I raised you all by myself till you was almost a young man, and now you is young and rich, and I is po' and gettin' old, and I come here b'lievin' that you would help the old mammy 'long down the little road that's left 'twixt her and the grave, and—" Tom relished this tune less than any that had preceded it, for it began to wake up a sort of echo in his conscience. So he interrupted and said with decision, though without asperity, that he was not in a situation to help her and wasn't going to do it. "Ain't you ever gwine to help me, Marse Tom?" "No. Now go away, and don't bother me any more." Roxy's head was down in an attitude of humility. But now the fires of her old wrongs flamed up in her breast and began to burn fiercely. She raised her head slowly, till it was well up, and at the same time her great frame unconsciously assumed an erect and masterful attitude, with all the majesty and grace of her vanished youth in it. She raised her finger and punctuated with it, "You has said the word. You has had yo' chance, and you has trampled it under yo' foot. When you get another one, you'll get down on yo' knees and beg for it." A cold chill went to Tom's heart. He didn't know why, for he did not reflect that such words from such an incongruous source, and so solemnly delivered, could not easily fail of that effect. However, he did the natural thing. He replied with bluster and mockery, "You'll give me a chance? You? Perhaps I'd better get down on my knees now. But in case I don't, just for argument's sake, what's going to happen, pray?" "Dis is what is gwine to happen. I's gwine as straight to yo' uncle as I can walk and tell him every last thing I knows about you." Tom's cheek blanched, and she saw it. Disturbing thoughts began to chase each other through his head. How can she know? And yet she must have found out. She looks it. I've had the will back only 3 months, and I'm already deep in debt again, and moving heaven and earth to save myself from exposure and destruction, with a reasonably fair show of getting the thing covered up if I'm just let alone. And now this fiend has gone and found me out somehow or other. I wonder